Welcome to the show, listeners. I am pleased to welcome you to my educational podcast, Children of Light. In my studies at Chevron College in Ireland, I created this podcast as part of my work with children with special needs. I have to say that I prepared the entire script for this podcast in advance. I structured it as a dialogue and invited someone who could voice the second part for me, acting as my guest on the show. Viktor Palazhchenko is my name, and today I have a very special guest, my mentor, my friend, and a true professional who has worked in education and child care for more than 30 years. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Sean Vail. My sincere thanks go out to you for taking the time to speak with us.
Oh, Victor, it's an honor to be here with you and great to be part of this conversation.
Thank you. Sean, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about the history of special education in Ireland? It is my understanding that there have been different approaches over the years.
Of course, Victor. Well, typically we talk about three main eras. The era of neglect and denial, the era of special schools, and the era of integration and inclusion. In the early years, children with special needs were often institutionalized or received no education at all. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that special schools started to appear. These schools provided structured education but kept children separate from their peers. Then came the inclusion movement. It gained momentum in the 1990s. Today, Ireland follows a policy where children with additional needs receive support in mainstream schools whenever possible, while special schools exist for those who require additional assistance.
That sounds like a major shift. What were some key reasons behind these policy and legislative changes?
Well, that's a great question, Victor. I'd say three major factors contributed to these changes. First, parental advocacy and involvement. That's where parents fought for their children's rights and court cases often pushed the government to act. Second one would be international influence. Ireland ratified agreements such as the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, often referred to as the UNCRC, and that emphasized inclusive education. And the third one was a shift in attitude, moving from the medical model, which viewed disability as a problem within the child, as opposed to the social model, which recognizes that barriers in society are the real issue.
You mentioned the medical and social models. Can you explain how they differ in practice?
Oh, of course. The medical model views disability as something to be fixed or treated, often focusing on limitations. The social model, on the other hand, emphasizes removing barriers so that children can thrive. For example, in a school following the medical model, a child with dyslexia might just receive extra tutoring in reading. But in a social model approach, the school would provide audiobooks, for example, text-to-speech software, and other accommodations to make learning accessible to everyone.
Sean, I understand that discussing complex topics like legislation in a podcast format can be challenging, but as a part of my academic curriculum, I cannot skip this topic today. Could you outline the key legislation that governs special needs education in Ireland?
Well, certainly, Victor. There are 6 major acts that relate to special needs education. and I will try to be as brief as possible. The Education Act, 1998, established the right to education for all children in Ireland. The Equal Status Act, was 2000 to 2018, prohibits discrimination, including in educational settings. The Education for Persons with Special Educational Needs, also referred to as the EPSIN Act. That was in 2004, and this provides for inclusive education wherever possible. The Disability Act, 2005, focuses on access to services for individuals with disabilities. The Child Care Act of 1991 provides protection and welfare for children, including those with special needs. The Teaching Council Act, that's of 2001, regulates teacher qualifications. It was ensuring that they were prepared to support diverse learners. And additionally, there are two key articles in the UNCRC specifically applied to children with special needs. The first one is Article 23. That recognizes the rights of children with disabilities and the need for special care and support. And then Article 28 ensures the right of all children to education, with measures to accommodate those with special needs. So, a great example of legislation in practice is how the EPSIN Act has influenced mainstream schools to integrate children with disabilities, providing resource teachers and special needs assistance.
Sean, let's talk about roles of SNAs. What do they do to support children with additional needs?
Viktor, SNAs play a crucial role in inclusive education. Their primary responsibilities include providing individual support for children with significant care needs, assisting with daily activities such as mobility, eating, and communication, helping teachers adapt lessons to ensure accessibility, and encouraging independence rather than excessive assistance so children develop essential life skills.
Sean, I hope you don't mind me asking, but as I understand, you have personal experience with both dyslexia and autism. How has this shaped your approach as an educator?
Oh, Viktor, I don't mind at all. Yes, I was diagnosed with dyslexia as a child and later discovered that I'm autistic. These experiences have given me a deep understanding of what children with these conditions go through. Dyslexia made traditional learning very difficult for me. I remember struggling with spelling and reading aloud in class. I know firsthand how important alternative learning tools are, such as audiobooks and speech-to-text software. Autism, on the other hand, affects how I process social interactions and sensory input. In my experience, children on the spectrum often need predictable routines, clear instructions, and sensory-friendly environments.
What additional support services exist in Ireland for children with special needs?
Oh, there are quite a few, but two key ones are the National Education Psychological Service, NEPS, and they provide assessments and guidance to schools on how to support children. And the second one is Enable Ireland. They offer therapy, assistive technology, and educational support for children with disabilities.
Before we wrap up, Sean, what changes would you like to see in the future of special needs education?
Well, there's really two main things. The first is more teacher training. Every teacher should have at least basic training in special education. And the second one, better transition support. And by that I mean moving from preschool to primary or primary to secondary school. It's a very challenging process for children with additional needs. We need more structured support to help them adjust.
Those are great suggestions. Sean, I can't thank you enough for sharing your time and experience with us today.
It's been my pleasure, Victor, and I'd like to wish you the best of luck with your studies and also with the podcast.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
In closing, I would like to say a few words about myself. My experience in supporting children with special needs in Ireland is new, so I can't yet make recommendations or how to improve it. In addition, I came from a country where the system works differently. Having said that, I'm also the father of a disabled child. My 5-year-old son suffers from Opitz-Frias syndrome or Opitz-GBBB syndrome. It has been a long journey together. Regarding recommendations, I would suggest not only focus on professionals, but also developing systems to support and train parents of disabled children. In a sense that parent is the child's first teacher and doctor. It is natural for a child to follow the adult that is closest to them. As a result, the child's life is influenced by the adult's personal status and competence. My wife and I had to learn everything on our own. And if another parent in this world is destined to go through a similar experience, I would very much like there to be someone nearby who could support and teach them. As for the child, no matter how simple it may seem, the most important thing for them is to feel loved. We cannot create courses on how to love our children or those in our care properly. But if we do not love our children, all children, then all our courses are in vain. Thank you for all our listeners. I hope this episode was helpful. You may hear more episodes of Children of Light if our lecturer Max is satisfied with this one. Until next time.